Next thing you'll want to do is fill in the base of the mermaid tail with a fly stitch. Your mermaid tail pattern isn't going to have these lines on it like I've drawn here, just because I wanted to make sure that you know that these need to be ones that aren't going to be stitched over completely. So I like to use my friction pen here, and this is just the very lightest color, so that way I can iron over it and that the lines will disappear. You can use any water soluble or disappearing method that works for you, but know that these lines are not going to be covered completely by your stitches. To make the mermaid scales, we're going to use 6 strands of embroidery floss, and I've tied a knot in one end. To do the fly stitch, we're going to bring your needle up through the back on this very bottom left corner of the mermaid tail, and then go 1 stitch length forward, however big you want your scale to be. And then don't pull that all the way through. You're going to go up to the line above it, and you're going to bring your needle up through the back. And then put your needle through this bottom loop here. Give that a little pull, not too much. And then go 1 tiny stitch length forward just to tack that in place there. So to me, this stitch is kind of like the lazy daisy stitch, where you make the stitch and then you tack it down on the end. So then again, you bring your needle up through the back where you want to start your next scale. Go forward the width of your mermaid scale. Bring your needle up on the line above in the middle of those 2 stitches, and then make sure to catch that loop there. Give it a tiny little tug, not too much. You want it to be a U, not a V. And then a tiny stitch forward to tack that down in place. And then just continue that along that line. Once you finish that row, we're going to go ahead and start the next row. I can't start it at the top of this one because I just went down in that hole right there. So we're going to start on the next one over. Bring your needle up through the back. And this time we're going to take it to the right, back down at the top of that scallop there. And then our needle is going to come up in between here, in between these 2 scales, so that they're kind of offset from each other. Make sure you grab that loop and then tack it down with a tiny stitch. And you'll notice I don't have anything right here, and that's okay. Depending on how big the space is between here and here, you can go in and just add, like, kind of wing it and add like a half a stitch. So you'd bring it up here and then tack it down right there. It might look a little funny, it might not. Just kind of play around with it. There's no right way or wrong way to do it. So then you'll see when I come to do the next row here, I can't just start here because then there would be a really large space there. So I'm going to start on the edge of the tail here. And then bring this over to that line there. But instead of going up in the middle, well, since the tail is kind of curved right here, I'm going to bring my needle back up on the edge again over here. So that will give me just kind of a smaller scale there. And tack that down. And then that kind of blends in with the side. And then your next stitch you'll do more in the middle. But maybe a little bit to the right. The tail's curving up in that way, so it's okay if some of them turn a little bit to the side or a little bit misshapen. Just kind of fill it in and wing it, and you'll see if you look closely at mine, they're not all uniform in shape, especially once you get up here, they start to go that direction, and it all turns out looking fine once you're finished. So once you're stitching it, I started with the dark green here and then moved to the medium green and then to the lighter green up here. You can do it however you want. If you want to get really fancy with it, you could in the transition rows kind of change the colors up a little bit here and there. I just opted to do rows of each one, and the number of rows will depend on how many lines you made. I don't think I even made the same amount of lines on this one as I did on this one, and that's totally fine.